Grand Rising. So if you want to understand health, if you want to understand how the body works, if you want to understand how body, mind, soul, and spirit are connected, and if you want to understand how important it is to detox from whatever we're exposed to on a daily basis, then this video is for you. You can be an addict, you can be a high performer, you can be a parent, you can be just a human that feels that something is not working, and you've been going to the doctors and to the therapists and nothing really seems to work. They're just giving you pills to fight the symptom, but then never actually going for the root, right? So I've seen everything. I've worked with a lot of these different modalities and a lot of these different humans, and I grew up in a household where these topics were omnipresent. So I know a little bit about these topics, and I've learned from the best, and I'm still learning from the best. I have these great mentors that work with me on these topics, and it is of utmost importance that you take this seriously, especially if you're struggling, right? Like, it doesn't matter what age you are at. If you haven't detoxed from glyphosate, aluminum, mercury, Wi-Fi, fluoride, just to name a few, you really have to get going. And this is not to put fear in you, this is to show you that it's possible to get your health back into control, or into your own control, and you don't outsource it to some other doctor, and you don't outsource it to someone else. You actually bring it back into your field of expertise. And I'm not saying you have to know everything, and I'm not saying you have to understand everything in depth, because you don't, because it's a lot of information and it's a lot of stuff to work through, right? But you have to know, okay, I'm taking these actions, I'm sticking to this protocol, why, and this is the outcome, and this is why it's important, right? Like, you really have to understand the why, because then it will help you stick to it, right? So the more I learned about these topics, and I worked with, first of all, I worked with everything that I talk about, I did myself, right? So none of this is just woo, and none of this is just assumptions. This shit works, and I've seen it with my own body and with my own self, how it worked out, and then that was the first, let's say, catalyst to actually go deeper and understand these topics on a deeper level. And now it works with my clients, and it worked with the clients of all my mentors, because I was one of them, right? And what I do now is basically I pull everything together that I did in these last years, and I've built a system that works and that doesn't require you to do this over the course of a few years, because you can really improve your health just in the course of a couple weeks and months, okay? So what am I talking about? I'm talking about detoxification without heavy pharmaceuticals. I'm talking about an understanding of how our system works without pushing anything major into the system that will have side effects, right? This is very crucial to understand, because you can always take a pill, you can always take something hardcore, you can always take an antibiotic and all that kind of stuff, right? But what happens is you just create these side effects that create many problems down the line, and they create more issues than you had before. Usually that's what happens, right? Sometimes an antibiotic is crucial, and sometimes it really makes sense to take it. But when you're working with parasites or some other bacteria that needs to get out of the system, for example, and so on and so forth, then I would actually agree that sometimes it's needed, right? But usually there's softer approaches that work even better, okay? Because you're actually killing off a lot of the positives as well, with an antibiotic, for example, because we're already at this topic. So what we're doing here is deep work. It might seem shallow because sometimes, we're starting really slow. Sometimes we're just taking in 1 or 2 supplements. Sometimes we're just, detoxing 1 or 2 specific things, and it seems very slow to you. But you will see, when you're doing the baths that I recommend, when you're doing, these detoxification baths, we're slowly increasing the salts and the supplementation that we put in and that we use simultaneously. And you will see just after 1 or 2 weeks how that shit actually hits the system, right? Because it is quite heavy, right? Like all that stuff that's been stored in, like the body intelligently stored in places where it wasn't, dangerous, let's say, to certain organs, for example. All that stuff slowly creeps up, right, and comes back into the system, right, into the circulation. And you will feel that, because you will feel the tiredness, you will feel the impact it has on your focus and all that stuff, right? Like, so you will have this small dip, and you will come out of that so much stronger down the line. So you will feel that. You will feel all that heaviness from the heavy metals. You will feel all that that tiredness that comes with it, and that slugginess and that slowness, right? Because your body will feel like it's slow and tired, and sometimes when you're, let's say, 45, if you've been doing this for the first time, you will feel really old for a couple of days, right? And that's all needed. That's all needed for you to actually step up and to actually work through this, right? Because the body is so intelligent. We just have to give it the tools and the room to actually heal itself, right? Because that's all we're doing. We're taking away these blockages that, Western society lifestyle has pushed into us and has pushed on us. And we're just taking away these blockages so the body can heal itself and clean itself. And some of these substances, the body can actually not clean itself from, right? Which is also crucial to understand. Because these things and these substances and these compounds that are floating around in the atmosphere, in the foods, in the water, in the medicine that we take, right? In the arm darts that we gotten as kids and the arm darts that we gotten a couple years ago, all that stuff is connected, right? And without going into too much detail, all these compounds that I listed before, these 5 or 6 compounds, and there's more, right? But like, if we focus on this is already enough work for, a couple months, then you will find out, because there's research for each of them, and there's research in combination, let's say 1 or 2 in combination, and how they affect the body, and how they affect the pineal gland, how they affect our brain, how they affect our lymphatic system, how they affect our organs. Like, there's research on that, there's a lot of literature on that. But where it gets really interesting is the combination of 5 of those or 4 of those. And there's not much research out there, right? Because that's where it gets really interesting, because then you have this cocktail that is really toxic for our system, because it kind of multiplies the toxicity and it compounds even faster over time, because you're blocking out one system, blocking out the other system, and then there's no, let's say, cleanup happening in the meantime, and the body is actually very, very incapable of doing its job when, let's say, for example, mercury is blocking every single peptide in the body. And it's so crazy to me. You have all these health coaches out there and a lot of these gym fanatics, and I'm not saying any of that is bad, but like, then they recommend you to take peptides, right? They recommend you to, go on testo cycles and so on and so forth, without actually having done the job that I'm talking about before, right? And this is super dangerous in my opinion, but that's just my humble opinion. You know, what do I know? I'm just a normal guy, right? So you can really listen to anyone you want. You can really also focus or follow anyone's advice that you want. This is just my experience and the experience of these really high level people that I work with that had, you know, thousands of patients throughout their life, because they're, you know, well into their 50s and 60s, all these people that I work with. And so, you know, I'm not just taking my experience here, and I'm not just talking about, you know, what I found out, because I'm not like that smart, right? Like I'm not like this fucking you know, hardcore researcher that is going to look at stuff on a molecular level. But what I'm good at is pulling a lot of information into my system and dissecting it and putting it into, you know, something that you can understand, and putting it into a system and a protocol that you can actually follow without, you know, needing to go to visit a clinic and a rehab clinic or a detox clinic for, you know, weeks and being out of your life, right? Like without seeing your family and without you know, interaction in your business and stuff like that, right? Because sometimes people do that. You know, there's really great clinics, especially in Germany and in Europe. I've seen a lot of that, and they're doing a really good job, but like you're there for, you know, 2 weeks, 4 weeks, 8 weeks. Like that's not the idea behind this, right? Like you're supposed to do this continuously, first of all, right? Like you can do a hardcore cleanse, right? Which is what most of these people do. Then they lose 10-15 kilos in the meantime, right? All of a sudden they're eating clean foods, and then, you know, they go back into their lifestyle and they just accumulate again, and then a year later they go back to the clinic. That's not how it's supposed to work, right? Like this is supposed to be a change in your lifestyle, and this is supposed to support your lifestyle, and this is supposed to help with whatever you're going through, right? And long term and sustainably, especially, right? So this is how this is done, right? This is how you will be able to use this information on a daily basis and on a weekly basis, right? And this is how we do this shit, right? So without, you know, going further, because I have to go train now and I'm late, there's simple steps that you can take. There are simple protocols that you can follow, and this is what I'm working on right now. Like I've been doing this with my one-on-one clients for, you know, a long time, and now basically I'm putting this into a course that you can follow by yourself, and you will have access to me and ask me all these important questions, you know, as you go along. And it's just going to be simpler to actually do this, because I don't have to repeat myself all the time, and I don't have to, you know, do all that stuff like on a daily basis, right? Like the same calls and the same conversations, right? Because it's pretty straightforward. Sometimes there's a little bit of a tweak that we need to do, but there's a very basic and very affordable way of helping everyone here, and this is what I'm working on. So stay tuned.